Murata, Seki. The two men who led Japan's airstrikes that morning were dead before the next sunrise. So were nearly 150 of Japan's finest flyers. And here's the part that makes no sense. They had just won the battle. It's the 26th of October, 1942. The South Pacific, north of a place almost no one has heard of, the Santa Cruz Islands. By the time the sun goes down, the Americans will have lost an aircraft carrier, watched a second one burn, and turned for home. The Japanese will have lost no ships at all. On paper, it's a clean Japanese win. In reality, it's the day Japan begins to lose the war. The question is why? So, ask it plainly. Which battle did Japan win that actually cost them the war? Almost no one names this one. Santa Cruz. To see why, go back a few months, to a muddy strip of jungle on Guadalcanal called Henderson Field. Whoever held that one airfield held the skies over the southern Solomons. Both sides knew it, and both were done circling each other. So, Japan sent its fleet to finish it. 3 large carriers, a light carrier, 4 battleships, around 10 cruisers, 24 destroyers, close to 200 aircraft. The Americans had less. 2 carriers, 1 battleship, 6 cruisers, 14 destroyers, about 136 planes. 1 carrier was the Hornet, the other, the Enterprise. Already bombed once, already patched, sent back out because the Pacific had almost nothing else. And like every carrier duel of this war, the two fleets would never even see each other. It would all be settled by aircraft, across open ocean in a few violent hours. Most retellings stop at the scoreboard. 1 American carrier sunk, none of Japan's. If you want the part almost no one covers, the hidden ledger that actually decided the Pacific, subscribe now, because what comes next is the loss Japan's Navy never recovered from. Here it is. When the smoke cleared, Japan had lost 99 aircraft. The United States, 81. Close. But the planes were never the point. The crews were. And by the standard reckoning, around half of Japan's torpedo crews were dead. Nearly 4 in 10 of the dive bomber crews, 1 in 5 of the fighter pilots, in a single day. It didn't begin that way. At dawn, scout planes find the enemy, and the strikes go in. Wave after wave of Japanese bombers tear into the Hornet, and 1 crippled bomber slams straight into her deck. They leave her dead in the water and burning. Later waves swarm the Enterprise, set her on fire forward, and even hammer the battleship South Dakota and the cruiser San Juan. By the end, the Americans have lost the carrier Hornet and the destroyer Porter. The Enterprise takes her hits and keeps fighting. And here's the first crack in the story. American aircrew losses were almost nothing, fewer than 30 flyers killed. Most of the planes that didn't come back weren't even shot down. They ran out of fuel or cracked up landing on a burning deck. Machines. Replaceable in weeks. So if Japan didn't lose a single ship, what did it actually lose? Everything that mattered. The carrier Shokaku was hit so hard, she'd be out of the war for 9 months. The light carrier Zuiho, badly damaged. And the men, 148 aircrew killed. Pilots, bombardiers, gunners. Among them, the leaders, the commanders of the first 2 strikes, 2 dive bomber group leaders, 3 torpedo squadron commanders, and more than a dozen flight and section leaders. The men who briefed the ready rooms and flew in front. So people still ask, was Santa Cruz worse than Midway for Japan? In one specific brutal way, yes. Japan lost more trained flyers here than at Midway, more than at Coral Sea, more than at the Eastern Solomons, and this is where the trap snaps shut. Japan built its carrier aircrew slowly, by hand, in tiny numbers, years of training for a handful of elite men. America was about to turn out pilots by the 1,000. When an American crew went into the sea, the machine made 10 more. When a Japanese veteran died over Santa Cruz, no one of his skill was waiting to take the seat. And the proof came at once. 2 of Japan's carriers that day, the Zuikaku and the Junyo, weren't badly damaged at all. They turned for home anyway. Not because the ships were broken, because there weren't enough men left alive to fly the planes off their decks. That's the uncomfortable lesson of Santa Cruz. Japan won on the only scoreboard anyone was watching. Ships sunk, seas controlled. But the war was being decided on a ledger no one could see: experience. By the sundown of this single battle, more than half of the elite flyers who had opened the war over Pearl Harbor, the men who started it all, were already dead. Less than a year after they stunned the world at Pearl Harbor, Japan was running out of the men who did it. And here's the part that still unsettles historians. We can name the carriers, we can count the aircraft down to the last plane, but the exact human tally, precisely how many of those opening day veterans were already gone, the records still don't pin down cleanly. The empire that prized these men above almost anything couldn't say for sure how fast it was burning through them. After Santa Cruz, Japan's carriers played no real part again in the fight for Guadalcanal, the campaign Japan would ultimately lose. It's tempting to draw a straight line from this one day to everything after. The one-sided battles of 1944, the desperate tactics at the end. That's interpretation, not fact, and honest history resists the easy arrow. But the pattern that started here is real. A nation can win the battle in front of it and still lose the one thing it can't replace. Santa Cruz didn't sink the most ships, it quietly spent the men. And experience can't be rebuilt in a shipyard. Next, we follow those empty cockpits forward, to the battle where Japan's rebuilt air fleet finally met America's at full strength, and the bill from this day came due.